Hi, my name is Magda Mook, and I'm the CEO of the International Coaching Federation.
Woo! Right.
This particular
I'm already kind of hassling you from the sideline, Magda.
did you have too much coffee already? What's going on, Michael?
Exactly. Too much coffee.
I am so excited to have Michael Bungay Stanier as my guest today, and you know, Michael, where do we start? You're a lawyer by training?
Well, I
And
have
then
a
you have
law
a
degree.
degree in English literature.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I when I finally got to university as an undergraduate in Australia, where I'm from, you
Right.
can do a law degree as an undergraduate degree.
Oh,
So I really wanted to do literature because that's what I was interested in. But I was a bit anxious because I'm like, does anybody employ people with degrees in English literature? I'm not sure. So I had the marks to get into law school. So I did what in Australia is known as a combined degree, a arts law degree.
uh-huh.
So English did really well, flourished, loved it. Actually won a Rhodes Scholarship that took me to Oxford based on my work there. Law school, struggled through it, barely passed, finished law school being sued by one of my own professors for defamation. So it really didn't go that well. So you'd never call me a lawyer, but I did somehow survive a law degree. Just
Phenomenal start to a story for a book. With
exactly.
nowadays you do define yourself as an author. I have a pleasure of knowing you for almost 20
I
years.
know.
And when I first met you, and I think it was in Prague, Czech Republic,
Right.
at the conference, you defined at that point yourself more as a coach and less as a
That's
author. Is
right.
that right?
Yeah, I was so sure that I was going to become a coach. Um, Even in university, so when I was 18, I'd done youth crisis counseling. So I'd be on the phone if kids were having a hard time or having suicidal thoughts. And I did my first training, and what you'd recognize as some of the basics around coach training, which is learn how to ask a question, learn how to shut up and listen to an answer, learn how to realize that their first answer is not their only answer and maybe not their best answer,
Sure.
learn how to be present and empathetic and hold safe space for people. And those are kind of the mechanics of what a coaching conversation are. And as I went through university, I continued to do that work and then started my career. And I ended up doing things which were asking questions. I did market research. I'd be sitting with people in a room, asking them questions, not about their life, but about tin soup, but also about their life, and how did it kind of connect.
Yeah.
So living in London in the 90s in the UK, I kind of saw the rise of coaching happening.
Hmm.
And it was clear to me that it was this woo woo, waste of time, weird thing coming from California. Cause, it's like, seems like 98% of the Californian population were coaches. And I was like, I'm in England. I'm skeptical and cynical about everything. But I was watching it and going, there's something interesting here. And when I moved to Boston, in the late 90s, I actually started calling myself a coach in my consulting clients, and I hired my first coach. And then when I moved to Toronto 20 years ago, 2001,
Hmm.
I did my coach training with CTI, the Coach Training Institute. Started a coaching practice, built it up, had my 20 clients or whatever it was, and to my shock, realized that I didn't love coaching. At least I didn't love having a coaching practice, is a better way of putting it. It
Hmm.
wasn't the business for me because I realized what I loved most of all was trying to be a teacher. And
Mm.
so now I had to ask myself, how do I best teach people? Because teaching had a type of scale that coaching doesn't have. It's like I can, reach thousands or even millions on a good day of people through the teaching I put out in the world. Coaching, you have more intimate relationships with fewer people.
Right.
So I started writing books. I started a training company.
Hmm.
I had my big break with a book called The Coaching Habit, which kind of really took off and really kind of established my name as a thought leader in this space. And so now I'm an author. I've got 6 or 7 or 8 books or something under my belt. But if I had to kind of self-identify, if I had to give myself a label, I would call myself a writer, because
Uh-huh.
that's the identity that I'm trying to live into. What does it mean to structure your life around the identity of a writer, as opposed to, as I've done it in the past and kind of up to now, I'm really a business person who writes books on the side.
Mm, mm. So you had a shift in your career
Mm.
yourself, something probably that you possibly assisted your clients in your coaching career. So how did it
Yeah.
come about?
Well, a shift in my career makes it sound like I knew what I was doing, and it doesn't always work like that. I do
Mhm.
love the saying, inspiration is when your past suddenly makes sense. And certainly one of the things about being oriented to coaching, which means really oriented to holding up a mirror and asking yourself, well, what is the being and the doing of my life? What's the pillars about how I'm identifying myself? I just noticed the areas where I'm like, I'm doing this, but it's not bringing me everything that I was hoping. It's
Mm,
bringing me enough money, perhaps, and maybe a little bit of status, but is it really the thing I'm best at?
mm,
And one of the things I realized, Magda, that I've developed a skill for over the time is taking my best guess at what's next. And I use that language really carefully. Like, I don't always know. I think you can get stuck into kind of like, I've got to know exactly what the right next step is before I take the next step. And I'm like, I never know what the
mm,
next right step is. But I have a hierarchy of missions that I try and serve. My biggest mission, my biggest self-identifying, is to be a force for change.
mm.
And then in the world of kind of business and creating, it's to infect 1 billion people with the possibility virus. So then I keep taking my best guess around what's the next project that could best contribute to infecting 1 billion people with the possibility virus so I can be a force for change. And then what I do is I ask, what's at risk if I take on this project?
Mm,
And what's at risk is generally time and money and reputation.
sure.
And so if I've taken my best guess, then I'm going to go, look, the time, I'm committed to it. I don't know, but this is my best guess on how to use my time. With the money, I'll understand how much I'm able to lose or not earn by taking this on and make a choice there. And in terms of reputation, I basically realized that I don't really have, I mean, nobody really knows who I am. I mean, some people do in the coaching world a little bit, but mostly, I'm pretty anonymous to the entire
Hey,
world. So I don't
dude,
really have a
come on.
reputation that I have to overly protect or worry about.
It's fascinating because many times in the coaching sphere, and yes, you are well known in the coaching field. Come on. Um, but many times what we hear is that people arrive at becoming coaches, and that's their revelation of
Mm,
how they can best support the change in the world. You went through it and
right.
found another path, which I find fascinating and inspiring in a way,
Yeah.
because we know from research that coaching often is the second, if not third, career for
Sure.
people, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But it could be something beyond that, much to your point. And yet, you mentioned very briefly that you started the training company, and the box of crayons, of course,
Yeah.
being something that I first knew you as an author of. And it is a great training for leaders and managers to
Yeah.
use coaching skills, not
That's right.
necessarily being coaches. So, how did that come about?
Well, you're touching on a really important point, which is when you figure out the impact you want to have. And so often people are pulled to coaching because I like helping people. That is
Mm,
actually something that I've experienced in my first job or my second job. And now I'm looking for the next best expression of that. It's really easy to go, oh, the thing I now do is become a coach. There's an
mm,
equivalent to, I need to write a book. I get asked all the time, I should write a book. And I'm like, should you? Because let me tell you what writing a book is like. It's miserable. You write a crappy first draft, it's terrible. You write a disappointing second draft. The third draft almost breaks your heart. The fourth draft gets a little bit better, but now you're like, I don't think it's a very good idea and I hate myself. The seventh draft, you finally got something, but you're so tired of writing about it. And then you finally get this book out into the world and it's taking you a year or a year and a half or 2 years. And almost all books sell less than 1,000 copies. So you haven't even touched a whole lot of people. And the real question I ask people is, it is a really powerful thing to have an idea and find ways of sharing your idea.
Mm, mm,
Writing a book is just one way of getting it out. And what are the prizes and punishments of pursuing that? Same with a motivation to help people.
mm,
Coaching is a really powerful way to do that, but it might not be the best for you. It's worth weighing up the prizes and the punishments for being a coach. The prizes are you get to talk to interesting people, you get to see direct impact. The punishments are you have to learn how to market, you have to learn how to sell, you have a limited scalability in the work that you do because you can only coach so many people. That means you have a limited amount of money that you can earn because it's number of people you can coach times the amount of money you can charge. There are pros and cons on this. So, I'm very keen for people to become great coaches, and coaching is one of your options in
mm.
terms of being drawn to be a contributor to the world, to give more to the world than you take by helping people.
Right. So I think you just discouraged everybody to write the book, including myself.
No, like
Um,
writing a book could be great, but also so many people. I mean, I write about this in my latest book called How to Begin, which is like, how do you set a worthy goal? And a worthy goal has three elements to it. It needs to be thrilling, important, and daunting. So let me just teach that for 2 seconds, Magda. Thrilling means, does this light me up? Does it get me going? Does it rub my hands and make me go, oh, I definitely want to do this? Important means that it contributes to the world. It gives more to the world than it takes. It has
mm,
a sense of purpose to it, because I want people's worthy goals to be making the world better, not just their lives better. And then daunting means, does this take you to the edge of who you are and what you know so that you can unlock your greatness? Because I have a core belief that we unlock our greatness by working on the hard things. So
mm,
the worthy goal is about, how do you figure out the hard thing, thrilling, important, and daunting, that unlocks the next best version of who you are. So to pull that back to writing a book, for a lot of people, writing a book is daunting. Writing
yeah,
a book could be important because they're like, I've actually got something to say that I want to be heard. But
mm,
writing a book is completely unthrilling. So you want to be going, well, first you got two choices. One is to abandon the idea of a book. And I've talked some people out of writing, or I've allowed people to put down the burden that they've carried for years of, I haven't succeeded yet because I haven't written a book. Sometimes you
mm,
can just go, you know what, that is actually not the project for me. The other way to frame it is, what does it take for you to make writing a book a thrilling experience, something that does light you up? And you could find ways of doing that. I'm going to
mm.
write it in a group. I'm going to go on a writing retreat. I'm going to hire a writing coach. There's all sorts of ways that you can reframe it to say, actually, this would make it exciting for me.
So as you said, you go through all this hassle and not super thrilling times and everything, and yet the coaching habit sold like million copies or
Well,
something.
yeah, like close to 1.5 million now. It's amazing.
Congratulations! But
I
why,
know.
why, why, why do you think? Why do you think? Because quite honestly, there is not a shortage of coaching books
Yeah.
on the market. Why do you think the coaching habit got such a phenomenal following?
Well, first of all, let me tell you the story behind it, because I had published another book with a New York publisher. The book is called Do More Great Work. And it's
Mm,
like 15 exercises to figure out, how do you focus on work that has more impact and more meaning. So this kind of this in business, it's like the two things that drive an organization: your culture and your strategy, impact, meaning and impact. And I'm like, here's how you figure out what lights you up and what work you should be doing. And I got this published in a New York publisher. It's super exciting. It did pretty well. It sold close to 100,000 copies. So that's pretty good for a book.
Yeah.
And so I had this idea for a book on coaching. And I went and pitched it to Workman, and they're like, okay, go write it. So I wrote it, came back to them. They're like, no, that's not a good book. I was like, okay. And they said, why don't you go away and try again? I was like, okay. So I went and wrote another version of the book, and they went, no, still not good. Why don't you go and do another version? So I'm like, okay. But when I did this 6 times, I wrote
Oh, wow.
6 versions of this book, and they kept saying no. And finally, because I'd lost heart. I was like, is this a good idea? Why can't I get them to say yes? It's killing me. I finally got really clear on why I wanted to write this book. And I think this is why it's been successful, which is I wanted to unweird coaching. Like there are people in our world, Magda, you and me included, who love coaching, who get coaching, who talk about coaching. And there's a vast number of people for whom coaching is a bit weird. It's a bit
Yeah.
touchy-feely. It's a bit HR, OD, pastely, overly appreciative, I don't know, snowflakey. I mean, you figure out your own words for why people don't trust it. And I'm like, I'm going to unweird coaching for busy managers and leaders and organizations, because coaching is a force for change. It's a powerful technology, and it's not really getting traction in most organizations. So I'm going to figure out a way to make the power of coaching, which I started to call being more coach-like. I don't want people in organizations to be coaches. I just want them to be more coach-like, stay curious a little bit longer, rush to action and advice giving a little bit more slowly, and make those my key audience. But it took me getting rejected by this publishing company, because I finally came back to them and said, I've got this idea, 7 questions, unweirding coaching. This is it. This is the book. And I called their bluff. I said, look, you either say yes or I walk. And they said no. And I was so shocked. I was so sure that they were going to say yes, because I got really clear. And I thought, you're going to bet on the guy who's already sold 100,000 copies of his last book. So I went home and I had a glass of whiskey, and I kind of complained to everybody who would listen to me. And then I got clear that I was going to self-publish this book, but as a professional. So I hired an editor, and I had a designer, and I found a copy editor. And then I found an organization called Page Two, who are based in Vancouver, who are the kind of the very best company doing this kind of hybrid model, where they bring all the expertise of publishing, but you kind of control the design and the creation of the book. And so I put out a book that was self-published, and also I had a single purpose to this book, Magda, which is I wanted it to be a classic in the coaching world. So I was like, I'm going to do I'm going to try and market as best I can, so it just becomes one of those books that when somebody says, what's a good book on coaching? This would be one of the 5 books that got mentioned. Miraculously, that's kind of happened with this book. It's really kind of one of those default coaching textbooks. But for everybody who's picking the book up, you don't know the story of like how miserable it was, how many times I wrote it, how many times I got rejected around it, how I ended up deciding to bet on myself with the book, and it worked. And what you also don't know is the number of projects where I bet on myself and it hasn't worked. So it doesn't always work. But this is the longest answer ever to your very simple question, which is like, why did the coaching habit work? Well, I'm like, I think it works because it's really clear. I write the shortest book I can. That's still useful. That's my design principle. So I cut a lot of stuff that I write so it's readable and accessible for people. But you have to know that part of the reason for success is that I just persisted and I bet on myself as I went through the process.
Yeah, it clearly points to me that you persisted and persevered because you truly knew that it was something important that you needed to share.
I didn't know, but it was my best guess. And that phrasing is really important to me, Magda, because I'm like, you never know.
Yeah.
But one of our commitments as a value we have in the 2 companies I formed, Box of Crayons and MBS.works, is process over outcome. You figure out your best guess, and then you do the process as well as you can. And then the outcome works or it doesn't work. You can't control the outcome, you can control how you commit to the process. So I was like,
Mhm.
this is worth a bet. And even if nobody buys this book, I'm really proud of it. It's part of my body of work, and I can stand behind this book regardless of whether 1 or 1 million people buy this book.
Well, 1 million now are
I know. I like it.
followers. So this is a did the publisher contact you afterwards? The one
No, the
that
publishers
rejected
never
you?
contacted me about it. In the acknowledgements, I did actually say thank you to Workman and the kind of the 2 or 3 people involved for giving me the freedom to go and do the book I want. And they still publish my other book. So
Yeah, sure, sure, sure,
I'm
sure.
surprised they haven't reached out to me, but to
Oh,
my surprise, I've kept the moral high ground and I haven't gone back and gloated to them. I've been tempted more than once, but I'm like, no, no, no. They'll either know about it or they won't know about it. Doesn't really matter anyway. I got lucky. I made the right decision.
well, that's fascinating story. Seriously fascinating and inspirational story, Michael.
Thanks.
And now you mentioned your new book coming out, right?
Yeah, I've got
When
a
do
new
you
book.
think it's gonna
So
be out?
this is my identity as trying to be a writer, which means I'm trying to write
Mhm.
books and put out a book a year or maybe
Sure.
even 2 books in some years. So I do have a new book coming out on June 27th,
June.
and it's
Okay.
called How to Work with Almost Anyone. And it's all about how do you build the best possible relationships with your key working relationships, whether that's your team or your boss
Mm.
or a vendor or a client or a collaborator. And so you can actually pre-order it now. It's on all of those online places that start with A and end in Amazon. um, and I think there's actually you can if you want to get kind of pre-publication bonuses, if you go to bestpossiblerelationship.com, there's a page there you can sign up for, and we'll let you know as soon as we get the pre-publication cool stuff available for you.
Well, that's fantastic. That's a great news. And you did mention that you do believe that coaching is seriously, you use the term technology, is something that is really having a great potential of changing the world for
Yep.
the better. So, what do you see now? And we're getting on the end of our time, but what do you see as the biggest? Um, I wouldn't say threats, but issues that you think coaching can seriously help address in a positive manner.
Well, I think there's interesting stuff happening, and whether you see that as an advantage or a threat depends on where you stand in the landscape.
Mm.
Like, it doesn't take much imagination now to look at AI and chat GPT and go, that can just coach you. A lot of the time, that can just coach you. And in fact, the coaching habit book, which just has seven, it's like, here are the 7 questions that can take you a long way to being more coach like.
Yeah.
You can just imagine how that works with AI. You say, hey, Siri, coach me. And Siri goes, Michael, sure. We coached last 2 weeks ago. What's on your mind? What's on your mind is one of the questions from the book.
Question. Yeah, sure.
And Siri and I go, oh well, I'm trying to come up with a new way of writing my next book. And Siri goes, oh, you talked about this last time. So, because AI has some memory of what you do and it learns, and then Siri goes, "So, what's the real challenge here for you, Michael?" And there's another question from the book, and I'm like, "Ah, yeah." So the real challenge is blah blah blah, and then Siri goes, "Well, great. What else?" And then Siri goes, "And what else?" And that won't do all the coaching all the time, but I do think it can do a lot of the coaching a lot of the time.
Hmm.
This technology just feels like it's getting closer to
Yeah.
become really good and ubiquitous. And in fact, we know, and you know better than I do, Magda, there are companies out there that are already building this and trying this and creating this.
Sure.
So I think the good news is I think coaching becomes more ubiquitous.
Mm.
Everybody goes, I can see the power of staying curious a little bit longer. Um, Everybody goes, I can lean into being coached more easily and more often. I think it means that if you're thinking about coaching as a profession, you have to go, how would I be different and better and valuable compared to the
Yeah.
experience that I can get from AI?
Yeah.
So I think it means that if you're in the bottom or the middle of that market, you will be under pressure
Mm.
because I could hire you at some $100 a month to coach me, or I could just ask Siri.
Hmm.
And so I think what that means is probably a smaller number of coaches over time, but a higher caliber of coaches in that small group.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is that the market for coaching is becoming greater,
Yeah.
and partly thank you for bringing that awareness
Thank
to
you. Yeah,
to
my
the
pleasure.
larger populations. So I think that the future for coaching is great, and I also do see AI as the accelerator and a support rather than the replacement, which I
Yeah.
think we'll agree on that.
Well, the very first book I wrote, which was almost 20 years ago, and I'm just going to go off camera for a nanosecond so I can grab a copy of it and bring it back. So 2 secs.
Yeah, we let him. There
So
he
this is
is.
the first. This is the first book I ever created. It's
Oh yeah.
basically out of print now, because I self-published it, and it's way too complicated to republish. But it's like a self-generating coaching tool. So
Uh-huh.
here's the way it worked: you would bring a challenge to the book. You can
Mm,
see there are stories and quotes and models there, and then whatever your challenge is, you just open the combination randomly because there's about 25,000 different combinations that you can have here. And so I've just opened these randomly. And you can see
yeah.
that each one of those brings a little bit of teaching and then a different question. So we could do this right now. Like everybody who's listening, and I know there's lots of people here, think of a challenge that's real for you right now, a real challenge here for you. And I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You can just pick the question that feels most useful for you. So the first question is, if you had to boil it, I think the situation down to one sentence, in what do you believe? What's non-negotiable for you? What would you put on a t-shirt? So that's one question. For some of you, that's like, oh, that's helpful. Some of you, that's nonsense. I don't even understand how I would apply that question to my challenge. Here's a second series of questions. This comes from, inspired by a quote from Emily Dickinson, one of my favorite poets, who says, "To multiply the harbors does not reduce the sea."
Mm,
So the questions I've got here is, what's the harbor you're headed towards? What would make your ship ship shape? Where's the danger? So I think that's a question that might resonate for people, whatever your challenge is.
absolutely.
And then the third series of content, it's a model, and it says, look, the origin of the word cynicism is for the Greek for a dog. It's literally to piss on ideas. The origin for the word inspiration is the Greek for breathed into by God.
Mm,
So the questions for you here are, where are you being cynical? How is that making you less than you are? What's the inspirational thing to do? Now, all of that is fun for me because I haven't looked at this book for years. So it's actually kind of cool to dig it out and kind of see some of the stuff I wrote 20 years ago.
thank you for bringing it.
Um, but in some ways, this is a mechanical version
Right.
of AI, which is like, I'm going to generate some stuff for you. Some of it will land, some of it won't land. We'll get smarter as we work together. The book won't get smarter, but AI gets smarter. So I think this idea of how AI becomes complementary. I mean, Mary O'Sullivan's just made a comment that I see. I can't see my clients talking to a machine. They want to be with a human. Well, maybe, Mary, but I might say, I can see, what if you trained your clients to talk to a machine to say, this is a really great supplement to my coaching,
Right.
so that you can get all of the minor stuff done with Siri.
Yes.
And then when we talk, we just talk about the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think often coaching loses some of its value because the coach and the person being coached end up talking about the first thing, which is an easier, minor
Mm-hmm.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the big, hard thing where
Mm.
the real value might be added in the coaching conversation.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think we're completely on the same page with that one. So, Michael, because we are seriously getting on the
I'm
end of our
sorry.
time, it's
You got
always
me excited. I'm a
fascinating to
talker.
talk
What
to
can I say?
you, always. So, Michael, well, we know the book is coming July 27th, I think you said, and
June 27th.
June, sorry. And then what's next for Michael?
Well, so the book coming June 27th is a pretty big thing.
Mm,
And, one of the less exciting things about writing a book is you then have to try and get people to buy your book. It turns out even worse than trying to write books is marketing books.
Mm,
So I'm thinking a lot about how we bring it to market in a way that people learn about it and I can have some fun while I do it. Um, I've got 2 books that I'm hoping to come out in 2024.
wonderful.
So, we talked about what is, my identity and how I'm trying to shift my identity to be a writer.
Mm,
So I'm really trying to say no to things, and not just no to things, but remove things so that I have the space to create and the space to write. So a lot of writing. I also design programs. So I've got a program that I'm designing at the moment, which will probably launch in September as well.
mm. Wow. One busy person you are. You always been for as long as I know you. So thank you so much, Michael, for being a guest with us today, and thank you for writing your books. Keep on writing.
My
You
pleasure.
know how to be either persistent or stubborn, right?
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
fine
It's hard to
line.
tell the difference.
Yeah. But thank you so much, everybody. You got some access to pre-order Michael's book, or there were several comments in the chat box that you already are very familiar with Michael's work, and
Thank
if you
you.
have not, then please do check it out because it's really good stuff. And if you didn't pick on it, Michael's got a great sense of humor, and it shows through in his books as well. So thank you, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
for
Thanks for
being
hanging
here.
out with Magda and me. Magda, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate
Always.
that. It's been great
Thank
fun.
you.